Welcome, dear listener, to a journey across time. The waves of the Aegean whisper secrets of gods and mortals. Tonight, we follow a tale woven with wisdom and quiet strength. This is not the story of battles or blades, but of guidance unseen. Our light is Athena, goddess of wisdom, clear-sighted and kind. She watches from Olympus, her gaze calm as dawn over the sea. Below her sails Odysseus, weary traveler of endless horizons. His heart longs for Ithaca, for hearth, for home, for gentle peace. Yet the road is winding, scattered with trials, doubt, and shadow. Athena does not shout, nor strike, nor command with thunder. She moves softly like wind on still water, a thought within thought. Her voice comes as clarity, urging patience when storms rise. Her counsel is courage shaped in silence, hope carried in calm. Through her, Odysseus learns that strength is more than force. Wisdom is the art of waiting, of seeing paths unseen by others. This podcast brings you closer to their bond of mortal and divine. Listen as the sea carries us through moments of subtle wonder. Stay with me, as Athena's light guides not only Odysseus. Perhaps it may guide you too in your own wandering. The story begins now, on the edge of the endless sea. High above the restless sea, the goddess of wisdom kept her gaze. Athena looked upon the mortal world with calm and steady eyes. She was not only guardian of cities, but also of journeys untold. Her spirit wandered with sailors, poets, and seekers of truth. Yet none stirred her heart quite like Odysseus, son of Ithaca. He was clever, restless, bold, and shaped by endless trials. Even from afar, Athena could see the weight he carried. He had left home with bright hopes and returned only in dreams. His sails had caught every wind, yet home remained far away. The seas tested him, the lands challenged him, and time wore him thin. Still, Athena knew there was more than hardship in his tale. She saw resilience flicker in his spirit like flame in the dark. He was not the strongest, not the swiftest, yet he was enduring. That endurance was what Athena wished to nurture and guide. The gods of Olympus often quarreled over the fate of men. Some demanded glory in battle, others demanded blind loyalty. But Athena saw value in cleverness, in patience, in thought. She did not wish Odysseus to win by force, but by wisdom. Her guidance would not come in storms or bolts of fire. It would arrive quietly, like sunlight through morning mist. Athena leaned close, whispering strength into his weary mind. He could not see her, yet he felt the shift in his heart. A calmness grew where fear had once held dominion. It was as if an unseen hand steadied the tiller of his ship. Odysseus paused, listening to the silence between the waves. There, in that silence, her presence touched him most deeply. She reminded him that the journey itself was a teacher. Each delay, each obstacle was not curse, but lesson in disguise. Athena's gaze followed as he steered into uncertain waters. She admired his stubbornness, but she tempered it with patience. She admired his wit, but she softened it with humility. Her care was not that of a rescuer, but of a mentor unseen. Through her, Odysseus began to trust his own intuition. The sea was vast, but wisdom could turn vastness into map. The stars were distant, but reason could turn distance into guide. Athena wished him to see that wisdom was always near, not in weapons, not in force, but in choices made with care. So as Odysseus pressed onward, Athena's spirit moved beside him. He thought of Ithaca not with despair, but with renewed resolve. His mind sharpened like the edge of dawn across a quiet horizon. Athena knew that heroes are not made only by victories. They are shaped by moments of stillness, waiting, and thought. Her role was not to lift him from the sea, but to guide his heart. She became the voice of reason when storms raged in his soul. She became the calm tide when doubt pulled him under. She became the spark of courage when darkness pressed close. All of this she did without demand for praise or recognition. For Athena, the gift of wisdom was never hers to keep. It was a flame passed on to light the path of those who sought. Odysseus, though weary, began to walk with a clearer stride. He faced the unknown not as victim, but as learner of life. Athena smiled, seeing him grow in silence and strength. Her watchful eye never wavered, her care never dimmed. She was goddess, he was mortal. Yet their bond was true. It was the bond of teacher and student, guide and traveler. Thus began the long tale of wisdom that would shape his way. Not through glory, not through conquest, but through guidance. Athena's presence lingered like a quiet star above the sea, a reminder that even in vastness, one is never truly alone. Welcome, dear listener, to a journey across seas, skies, and dreams. This is not only the story of Odysseus, the wanderer of old. It is also the story of guidance, of wisdom whispered through the winds. Long after the clash of armies and the fall of Troy, silence filled the coasts. In that silence, a man longed for home, for the hearth of Ithaca, for peace. But the sea was wide, restless, filled with challenges beyond strength alone. Odysseus was brave, yet courage without wisdom can lose its way. And so, the goddess Athena, guardian of insight, watched from afar. She did not command storms, nor strike with thunder, but guided softly. Her presence was felt in quiet thoughts, in sudden clarity, in steady hope. For every great journey is not only fought with sails and oars, it is carried forward by choices, by patience, by the heart that endures. Athena's guidance was not a loud call, but a gentle, steady hand. It taught Odysseus that strength lies in wisdom, not in anger or force. Tonight, let us walk beside them through the echoes of ancient seas. Let us listen to the goddess of wisdom and the wanderer she loved. Their path holds lessons still alive for us, here in our own journeys. The war had ended, and the fires of Troy had long faded into ash and memory. The sea stretched before Odysseus, vast, blue, and endless, carrying both promise and peril. He stood at the shore, his gaze fixed on the horizon, a man torn between hope and weariness. The sound of the waves was steady, like a drumbeat reminding him of time passing without mercy. Odysseus felt the weight of years, the longing for his family, and the pull of Ithaca. The thought of his wife Penelope and his son Telemachus burned quietly within his heart. But the way home was not clear, nor was it simple, for the sea holds many mysteries. His hands, hardened by war, now trembled not from fear, but from the uncertainty of tomorrow. He knew the strength of armies, the clash of shields, the strategies of battle. Yet here, before the sea, he faced a different kind of trial, one no sword could master. The call of the sea was not cruel, but it was unyielding, asking for endurance and wisdom. Every breeze carried whispers of both danger and discovery, as though the world tested him. Odysseus breathed deeply, sensing that his journey would shape him in ways unseen. His ship waited, strong and loyal, ready to cut across the waves like an arrow of hope. The crew gathered around him, men tired yet faithful, looking to him for direction. Their eyes asked silent questions, for they too longed for home, yet feared the unknown. Odysseus lifted his voice, calm but firm, steady as the rocks that frame a harbor. We sail not only to return, but to endure, to learn, to be shaped by the path ahead. The men listened, and though the sea still frightened them, his words lit sparks of courage. Athena, unseen yet near, watched with eyes full of care and wisdom beyond measure. She saw not only a warrior, but a seeker, one who must learn from each tide. Her presence moved gently, like wind across olive leaves, unseen yet guiding. She whispered in thought rather than thunder, shaping courage into clarity. For Odysseus would need more than strength to reach the shores of Ithaca. He would need patience, cleverness, humility, and the wisdom to see beyond fear. As the ship left the shore, the oars struck the water with rhythm, steady and true. The men rowed, their muscles straining, yet their hearts leaned on hope of returning. The sun dipped low, casting golden light across the rippling waves like liquid fire. Odysseus stood at the helm, steering with steady hands, eyes scanning the horizon. Every wave carried memory, every gust of wind felt like a message from the gods. He thought of the years stolen by war, the laughter of his child he had missed. He thought of Penelope's patience, her weaving and her waiting, her unshaken faith. The sea became not only water, but a mirror of his soul. Vast, restless, searching. Athena's guidance touched him in quiet ways, like calm thoughts in turbulent hours. When doubt rose, he heard her in the silence, steadying his heart against despair. When the men murmured, restless and afraid, he found words that soothed their spirit. Not all voices were his own, for wisdom greater than his whispered alongside him. Thus began his long voyage, not of battles, but of inner journeys across the endless sea. Every dawn promised lessons. Every dusk carried stories, written in the foam of waves. Odysseus knew that home was far, yet every mile forward held meaning deeper than distance. The call of the sea was both burden and blessing, shaping him as the gods intended. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the salt wind brush against his face. Somewhere, far off, Ithaca waited, patient as stone, steady as the heart of his longing. And so he sailed, guided not only by stars, but by the quiet counsel of wisdom. Athena's voice would remain near, unseen yet ever present, as the first true compass. Night fell gently over the sea, and the stars began their quiet watch above the dark horizon. The ship drifted on calm waters, and the men rested, their bodies heavy with exhaustion. Odysseus lay awake, his eyes open to the sky, his mind restless with questions unspoken. The sea was silent, yet within that silence, thoughts pressed on him like waves without end. Would he ever see Ithaca again? Or had the gods left him to wander forever? The fear of the unknown crept into his heart, stronger than any spear or sword. As he closed his eyes, sleep came slowly, wrapping him in shadows of dream. It was then, in that fragile space between waking and rest, that Athena appeared. Her voice did not thunder, nor did she blaze with light, but came soft as dawn. "Odysseus," she whispered, "you are not abandoned, nor left adrift without purpose." Her tone carried warmth, like a mother's hand resting gently upon a weary brow. She spoke not as a ruler commanding, but as a guide reminding him of who he was. Strength alone cannot bring you home, for strength breaks against the sea like stone. Wisdom must be your oar, patience your sail, and hope the compass that never fails. Odysseus stirred in his dream, listening, his heart lifting as though freed from chains. The goddess's words shaped his fears into lessons, his doubts into pathways forward. She told him that the journey was not punishment, but a shaping of his soul. Each trial ahead would be a mirror, reflecting not the world, but his own choices. The path home would demand not only cleverness, but humility before the unknown. Her voice was like water over stone, steady, shaping, carving wisdom deep within. "Remember," she said, "you are never alone when you choose to listen to wisdom. Even in silence, I will walk beside you, hidden in thought, felt in clarity." Odysseus dreamed of birds flying above his ship, wings sharp against the morning sky. He saw the curve of olive leaves, glimmering silver in the sun, and knew it was her sign. Athena's presence was not thunderous, but subtle, guiding him through symbols and whispers. Her counsel was the reminder that endurance begins within, not in the arm or blade. When he awoke, dawn spread gold across the waters, and he felt a new calm within. The men stirred, rubbing sleep from their eyes, waiting for direction with quiet trust. Odysseus spoke gently, his voice carrying strength drawn from the goddess's whisper. "We sail on," he said, "with patience, with courage, for every mile leads us closer to home." The men nodded, not knowing of Athena's dream, but feeling the steadiness in his tone. For the sea tests not only ships, but the spirit of those who sail upon it. Athena knew this, and so she planted seeds of wisdom within Odysseus's restless heart. The winds shifted, filling the sails with gentle force, as though answering unseen prayers. Odysseus gripped the helm, feeling both the vastness of the sea and the nearness of guidance. No thunderbolt struck, no storm fell. Only quiet strength moved through the morning. Athena's gift was not in battles fought, but in clarity that banished despair. Odysseus smiled faintly, for he carried within him now a compass unseen, yet certain. The stars would guide by night, the sun by day, and wisdom by every moment between. So the ship sailed onward, carried not only by wind but by trust in unseen counsel. The dream lingered, a reminder that the goddess of wisdom walked beside him still. And though the sea was wide and his journey uncertain, Odysseus no longer felt lost. Athena's whisper had become part of him, steady as the tides, constant as the stars. The sea carried them onward until at last land rose from the horizon, green and shining in the sun. The men cheered at the sight, for their hearts longed for rest, food, and the comfort of solid ground. Odysseus watched quietly, his heart lifted by their joy, but cautious of what he did not yet know. The island appeared gentle, filled with soft hills, flowing streams, and fruit trees heavy with ripeness. Birds circled above the forests, their calls sweet, and the air carried the perfume of blossoms. It seemed a place made for peace, a haven after endless waves and sleepless nights at sea. The men gazed with hunger in their eyes, for the island promised safety, rest, and plenty. Yet deep within, Odysseus felt the pull of uncertainty, a whisper warning against surrender. For too much comfort can become a chain, and too much ease can turn the heart from home. The ship anchored, and the men rushed ashore, eager to taste the fruits and drink the water. They laughed as they ate, their laughter loud, echoing through the quiet of the island. The grass was soft beneath their feet, and soon some lay down to rest, their bodies weary. But Odysseus did not rest, for his mind remained sharp, and his heart remembered Ithaca. He walked the shoreline, watching the waves break gently, yet hearing Athena in his thoughts. Her presence returned as a whisper, soft and steady, guiding him through the temptation of ease. "Do not forget your journey," she said, "for sweet places may trap the soul as much as storms." Odysseus listened, his eyes fixed on the horizon, feeling both longing and discipline within him. He knew his men deserved rest, yet he feared their hearts would lose the fire to continue. The goddess's wisdom reminded him that true peace waited not here, but far across the sea. He returned to his crew, his voice calm, though within him the struggle pressed hard. "My friends," he said, "this island gives comfort, but we must not let it steal our purpose." The men looked at him, some with disappointment, for they longed for more than a brief stay. But others nodded, for they trusted the man who had led them through shadows and storms. Night fell upon the island, quiet and gentle, with stars glimmering above the treetops. Some men dreamed of Ithaca, while others dreamed only of this easy peace that held them. Odysseus dreamed again of Athena, her eyes bright with wisdom, her words firm yet kind. "Comfort is not always a gift," she said, "for it may weaken the will and blur the vision. You must choose, Odysseus, whether you will linger or rise again toward your true home." When dawn returned, he rose before the others, standing tall beneath the rising sun. He felt the pull of the sea calling him forward, reminding him of the path still waiting. Gathering his men, he spoke again, his words carrying both strength and gentle care. "We have tasted rest, but now we must rise, for Ithaca is our true destiny, our true shore." The men listened, and though some hearts longed to stay, they trusted his guiding hand. One by one, they returned to the ship, their faces torn between desire and discipline. The island faded slowly behind them as oars struck water, steady and strong once more. Odysseus kept his gaze fixed on the horizon, never glancing back at the land of comfort. Athena's presence warmed his spirit, reminding him that wisdom shines brightest in restraint. For temptation is not only danger in disguise, but also a test of memory and devotion. Odysseus had passed this test, learning that the heart must not be captured by ease. The sea opened before them again, endless and uncertain, yet filled with promise and hope. The men rowed in rhythm, their voices quiet, their thoughts full of both weariness and faith. And in the silence between waves, Athena's whisper lingered, steady as the pulse of the sea. "Carry wisdom as your shield," she said, "and let memory of home be the light on your path." Odysseus breathed deeply, the salt air filling his chest, the horizon calling him onward. The island of temptations faded into memory, but the lesson burned bright within his soul. For the journey was not only across waters, but through choices that shaped the spirit. And with every choice guided by wisdom, the shores of Ithaca drew nearer, unseen but certain. The sea was calm at first, a mirror of silver stretching far beneath the rising sun. The men rowed with steady rhythm, their voices low, their hopes still alive in the morning air. Odysseus stood at the helm, his hand firm on the rudder, his mind fixed on Ithaca. Yet the sky began to change, clouds gathering at the edges, heavy and dark with silent warning. Winds rose slowly, turning soft ripples into restless waves that slapped against the hull. The men looked up, uneasy, for storms were no strangers to sailors who lived by the sea. Odysseus steadied his heart, though within him doubt stirred like water churned by the wind. He remembered Athena's whispers, her counsel of patience, wisdom, and courage within fear. The storm broke without warning, lightning flashing, thunder rolling like mountains collapsing. Waves rose high, lifting the ship as though it were a toy tossed in the hands of the sea. The men cried out, their voices swallowed by the roar of the wind and the crash of water. Odysseus gripped the helm, his knuckles white, his spirit torn between panic and resolve. The sea seemed endless in anger, yet Athena's presence flickered like a star behind the clouds. Her whisper came not through sound, but through the stillness that pressed into his heart. "Hold steady," she said, "for courage is not the absence of fear, but mastery of its weight." Her words steadied him, like stone beneath his feet, though the ship danced on raging waves. He called to his men, his voice clear and strong, cutting through the fury of the storm. "Row with rhythm," he cried. "Do not fight the sea, but move with it, endure with it." The men obeyed, their fear shaping into focus, their oars cutting a water with new resolve. Lightning split the sky, thunder cracked, yet the ship held, carried by both strength and guidance. Hours passed like years, the storm unrelenting, the sea determined to test their will. Odysseus kept his gaze forward, though rain blinded him and salt stung his weary eyes. In his mind, Athena's whisper remained, not fading even as the storm roared louder. "Do not surrender to despair," she said, "for storms pass, and the sea remembers calm." At last the winds began to ease, the waves falling from mountains to hills, then to ripples. The men sagged with exhaustion, their arms heavy, their eyes wide with relief and wonder. Odysseus stood tall, though his body trembled, his spirit alive with gratitude for survival. The sea grew calm again, the sky clearing, sunlight breaking through the shreds of cloud. The men cheered weakly, their voices hoarse, but their hearts beating strong with renewed hope. Odysseus looked upward, whispering thanks to the goddess who had steadied his soul. He knew her hand had not stopped the storm, but had guided him through it with wisdom. For storms are not only trials of the sea, but trials of the heart, testing what lies within. The lesson burned clear. Courage is not strength against the storm, but endurance within it. As night fell, the men rested, their bodies drained, but their spirits sharpened by survival. Odysseus alone remained awake, gazing at the stars as they returned to their places above. He thought of Ithaca, of the calm shores waiting, and of the trials still yet to come. Athena's voice lingered like a song carried on the wind, soft yet steady in his soul. "Fear may rise like waves," she said, "but wisdom steadies the helm, and courage steers you home." Odysseus breathed deeply, the salt air filling his chest, his eyes fixed on the horizon. The storm had passed, but its memory would remain, carved into the heart of every man aboard. Each wave, each roar of thunder, each whisper of Athena had shaped them for the path ahead. The ship sailed onward, scarred yet strong, carrying men whose courage had been tested and found true. And Odysseus, guided by both storm and wisdom, carried within him the strength to endure. Dawn rose soft and golden, painting the sea in colors of fire and rose. The ship moved gently, its sails swelling with a forgiving breeze. The men stirred awake, their bodies weary yet lifted by the calm morning air. Odysseus stood quietly, his eyes scanning the horizon for signs of land or omen. At last, a shape appeared, faint and shimmering like a dream beyond the waves. An island, green and mysterious, its shores wrapped in mist, its hills rising high. The men cheered, for their hearts longed for land, food, and a place to rest. Yet Odysseus felt a shadow stir, for beauty often hides dangers unspoken. Athena's whisper came again, calm and wise, threading into his thoughts. "Be wary, son of Ithaca, for not all gifts are given in kindness." The island drew nearer, its cliffs tall, its valleys deep with forest and songbirds. The ship reached the shore, and the men leapt with joy onto the sand. They laughed, gathered fruit, and drank from cool streams running between rocks. The land was rich, the air sweet, the ground soft beneath their weary feet. Odysseus allowed them joy, yet he walked apart, his heart restless with caution. As he wandered, he felt a presence in the air, something unseen yet strong. The island itself seemed alive, watching, whispering, testing the hearts of strangers. Athena's presence grew near, unseen yet steady. like the sound of a hidden harp. "Do not forget," she said. "Every choice bends the path. Every step shapes destiny." Her words burned into him, guiding his gaze, sharpening his caution. He called to his men, urging them not to stray too far into the green unknown. But joy made them careless, and their ears deaf to the warnings he gave. They feasted, laughed, and rested, their hearts loosened by ease and plenty. As night fell, Odysseus lit a small fire, his eyes never leaving the trees. Shadows moved, not of men, but of shapes that slipped quick between branches. The island was not empty, though silent, and its silence was a language of its own. Odysseus did not sleep, though his men lay heavy with dreams beside him. He watched, waited, and listened, every sense sharpened by the whisper of Athena. "Trust your instincts," she said, "for truth often hides behind comfort and silence." At dawn, the men woke refreshed, their voices eager for more of the island's bounty. But Odysseus gathered them close, his words firm though gentle. "This place is not ours," he said, "and its silence holds secrets we should not test." Some frowned, wishing to linger, for comfort was rare and hardship endless. But others nodded, trusting the man who had led them through storms and shadows. Reluctantly, they obeyed, gathering what little they could carry from the land. The ship pushed off the shore, the oars dipping into the calm morning sea. The island grew smaller behind them, its mist rising like a veil over hidden truths. Odysseus kept his gaze forward, his heart heavy with unease, yet certain of his choice. Athena's whisper returned, soft as wind in leaves, warm as fire in the cold. "Wisdom is knowing when to take and when to walk away." Odysseus bowed his head, gratitude filling him, though his path remained hard. The men murmured among themselves, some thankful, some doubtful, some weary. But the sea carried them onward, steady, as the island slipped into memory. Odysseus knew the trial was not in storms or battles, but in choices of the heart. For temptation wears many faces, and not all dangers roar with thunder. Athena's guidance reminded him that true strength is not only in arms, but in restraint. As day warmed into afternoon, the horizon stretched wide, the path unmarked, yet clear. The men rowed in rhythm, their songs rising again, their faith slowly renewed. Odysseus watched the sea with quiet eyes, his spirit sharpened by the lesson. For every island was a mirror, and every choice a thread in the weave of destiny. The sea stretched wide and silent, its waves gentle after days of trial and storm. The ship moved forward with patient rhythm, its oars dipping like steady heartbeats. The men rested in quiet, their minds filled with both longing and exhaustion. Odysseus stood at the helm, his eyes on the horizon, his thoughts on Ithaca. Every trial had sharpened him, yet every mile felt like both progress and burden. Athena's presence lingered, unseen but felt, like a steady hand upon his shoulder. Her voice rose within him, a calm reminder carried in the rhythm of the sea. Each step, each choice, leads you closer, though the path bends in unseen ways. The men murmured among themselves, speaking of home, of families waiting beyond the waves. Some spoke of laughter, of children's voices, of firesides warm and simple. Others dreamed of food, of fields of grain, of orchards heavy with fruit. Odysseus listened in silence, his heart heavy with both love and burden of leadership. For he carried not only his own longing, but the hope of all who sailed with him. The sea darkened with evening, the sky filling with stars like a map of silver fire. Odysseus gazed upward, reading the constellations as though they whispered guidance. The men sang softly, their voices weaving a hymn of hope and memory. Each note carried them forward, soothing their weariness, binding their hearts together. Odysseus smiled faintly, hearing within their song the pulse of endurance. Athena's whisper touched him again, her words threaded with wisdom and care. Do not lose sight of who you are, even as the sea seeks to scatter your spirit. He closed his eyes, breathing deep, letting her words steady his restless mind. In the distance, faint lights flickered upon the sea, strange and uncertain. The men stirred, pointing, their voices rising with curiosity and unease. Odysseus narrowed his gaze, watching the lights sway like lanterns in the dark. Were they ships, stars reflected, or omens set by gods to test them? Athena's voice rose again, soft but firm, a reminder against haste and folly. Not all lights are beacons, Odysseus. Some are lures to lead you astray. He nodded quietly, his hand tightening on the rudder, his spirit sharpening with caution. He turned the ship slightly, guiding them away from the uncertain glow. Some men grumbled, wishing to chase the lights for warmth, food, or company. But Odysseus's voice rang steady, reminding them of storms survived, of trials endured. Not all that glitters is a gift, he said, and not all signs lead to safety. The men listened, uneasy but trusting, their faith in his wisdom carrying them onward. The lights faded slowly into the dark, swallowed by mist and endless sea. Relief settled among them, though quiet and unspoken, like a breath released. Odysseus whispered thanks to Athena, grateful for her unseen shield. For guidance is not always a hand that lifts, but often a voice that warns. The night deepened, stars wheeling above, the sea steady beneath the hull. The men slept in turns, their dreams heavy with visions of home and hearth. Odysseus remained awake, his heart restless yet firm, his eyes on the horizon. He thought of Ithaca, of Penelope weaving by firelight, of Telemachus grown tall. His chest tightened with longing, but his spirit refused to falter. For hope is a fire, and wisdom is the hand that shields it from the wind. Athena's presence lingered like a soft glow, neither seen nor touched, but always near. Her whisper closed the night, weaving through the creak of the ship and the sigh of the sea. Endurance is not silence, Odysseus. It is strength born from memory of love. Odysseus breathed deeply, carrying her words as if they were armor around his soul. The ship pressed forward, steady and silent, carrying dreams across the endless sea. The horizon waited, unseen yet certain, like destiny itself calling them home. The dawn came soft, painting the waves in hues of silver and rose. The ship drifted steady, carried by a gentle breeze and steady oars. The men stirred, stretching weary limbs, their eyes still heavy with dreams. Odysseus watched the horizon, his gaze fixed on distant shapes, yet unseen. A faint mist clung to the sea, curling like breath from a sleeping giant. Within it, shadows shifted, strange and uncertain, stirring unease in his heart. The men whispered among themselves, pointing at the shifting veil of fog. Some spoke of islands, others of spirits, and some of treasures hidden deep. Odysseus held silence, for he knew the sea often cloaked its dangers in mystery. Athena's whisper touched him then, soft yet sharp like light cutting through smoke. Be cautious, Odysseus, for not all that hides is meant to be found. The mist thickened, swallowing the horizon, leaving only gray and silence. The men grew restless, their hands tightening on oars, their voices low with fear. Shapes flickered in the haze, tall and fleeting, like towers or cliffs of smoke. The ship glided forward, its timbers creaking, its men holding breath in dread. Odysseus's heart pounded, yet his spirit did not falter, sharpened by Athena's voice. The fog shifted suddenly, revealing dark rocks rising sharp from the water. The men gasped, their eyes wide, for the ship had drifted close to peril. Odysseus gripped the rudder, turning swiftly, his arms burning with effort. The ship scraped close, the waves breaking hard against jagged stone. Athena's voice rose within him, steady, guiding him through the danger. Trust your sight, trust your will, for fear clouds more than any mist. He steered with precision, the oarsmen pulling in unison, their strength renewed. The ship slipped past the rocks, the fog breaking at last into open sea. The men cheered, their relief rising loud, their hearts freed from the grip of fear. Odysseus breathed deeply, his spirit both weary and grateful for survival. He turned his gaze skyward, whispering thanks to the goddess who watched unseen. Athena's whisper lingered still, calm and full of wisdom. Danger hides in silence as often as in storm, and wisdom is seeing both. The men resumed their rowing, their voices rising in low songs of relief. But Odysseus's thoughts lingered on the mist, on its secrets still unseen. For every trial revealed not only the sea's nature, but the heart of a man. He knew more dangers would rise, cloaked in beauty or silence or shadow. Yet with Athena's guidance, he felt the strength to face what lay ahead. The sun climbed higher, the mist fading into memory, leaving the sea wide and bright. The men laughed again, their spirits lifted, their eyes turned to the horizon. But Odysseus stood apart, his mind weighed by lessons hidden in the morning. Athena's presence warmed him, like a lamp against the endless uncertainty. Her whisper came once more, quiet as the tide, steady as the stars. Do not mistake relief for safety, Odysseus. The path ahead still tests the soul. He bowed his head, taking her words deep into the chambers of his heart. For he knew every trial was both a danger and a teacher, a step toward Ithaca. The ship sailed on, its sails full, its men hopeful, its leaders sharpened by wisdom. The horizon stretched open, wide and uncertain, yet filled with promise. And within Odysseus, the steady flame of resolve burned stronger than before. The day stretched long as the sea lay calm, its surface shining like polished glass. The men rowed lightly, their songs weaving with the rhythm of the oars. Odysseus stood at the stern, his mind restless, though the waters were kind. The silence of safety often stirred him more than the chaos of storm. For he knew peace at sea was often brief, a pause before the next trial. Athena's whisper came, low and gentle, threading through the salt-laden air. Even in calm waters, Odysseus, the mind may drift into peril unseen. Her words sank deep, reminding him that danger was not only found in storms. He watched his men, their faces lifted with laughter, their spirits light. They longed for rest, for joy, for dreams of home that called them each night. But he saw too the way hope could blind, how comfort could dull the senses. The sea ahead was vast, yet he felt the weight of unseen eyes upon them. The horizon shimmered, and faint shapes danced like mirages in the light. Islands rose in the distance, their shores green, their hills soft in haze. The men cheered at the sight, their hearts leaping with thoughts of land. They spoke of food, of water, of rest from the endless rocking of waves. Odysseus remained silent, his gaze sharp, his heart touched by Athena's caution. For he knew the sea's gifts often carried hidden threads of trial. Athena's voice returned, steady and warm, guiding his uncertain thoughts. Listen not only to what your men desire, but to what wisdom unveils. The ship glided closer, the scent of blossoms drifting faint across the breeze. The men leaned forward, eyes wide with hunger for land and freedom. But Odysseus felt unease coil within him, steady and unshaken. He called his men to pause, his voice calm yet commanding. Not all beauty welcomes, not all shores bring rest, he warned. The men frowned, weary from the sea, longing for ground beneath their feet. Yet they trusted him, for his words had led them through storms before. He guided the ship along the coast, keeping distance from the tempting shores. The men grumbled low, but the goddess's presence steadied his hand. True leadership, Athena whispered, is not in pleasing hearts, but in guarding them. The island's colors glowed brighter, yet Odysseus held course away from it. The men sighed, some bitter, but none dared to defy his wisdom. As the ship drifted onward, the island's beauty dimmed and faded. The sea opened wide again, endless and uncertain, yet safe from that shore. Odysseus exhaled slowly, his heart heavy but sure of his choice. Athena's whisper warmed him, soft as sunlight breaking through clouds. You see beyond surface, Odysseus, and that sight will guard your path. The men slumped, some silent, some quietly humming songs of home. Odysseus looked back once, watching the island vanish into the haze. He wondered what lay within, paradise or peril cloaked in fair disguise. But he did not dwell, for Athena's counsel reminded him to keep forward. The sea's calm returned, its vastness carrying both promise and uncertainty. Night drew near, the stars rising like ancient lamps across the sky. The men slept, their dreams carrying them back to Ithaca's familiar shores. Odysseus alone kept watch, his spirit steady beneath the gaze of the gods. Athena's presence lingered, unseen yet felt, a hand upon his weary heart. Her voice drifted once more, a vow woven into the night wind. Each choice you make builds not only your journey, but the soul you carry home. And so, Odysseus steered on, through calm and shadow, with wisdom as his compass. For though the sea stretched endless, he was never truly alone. The morning sun rose bright, casting golden paths across the restless sea. The men woke slowly, their laughter returning with the warmth of daylight. Odysseus watched them, their spirits lighter after the long night of sailing. Yet in his heart, a quiet tension remained, a whisper from the goddess. Athena's voice lingered, soft but clear, reminding him to stay vigilant. For even in light, shadows may follow, and not all threats strike openly. The horizon stretched wide, yet Odysseus's eyes caught movement at its edge. Dark sails appeared, faint at first, then bolder against the morning light. The men murmured in unease, pointing, their voices rising in low alarm. The ships drew closer, their oars cutting water with swift, practiced strokes. Odysseus's heart steadied, for he knew the sea carried not only storms, but men. These were no friends, but wanderers of greed, hunters of the unguarded. The men looked to their leader, fear flickering behind their weary eyes. Odysseus raised his hand, his voice calm though the danger grew. Strength alone will not save us, nor fear. We must outthink those who pursue. Athena's whisper filled his mind, steady as the tide. Use not only the oar, Odysseus, but the mind, for cunning sails farther than force. He studied the waters, the winds, the curve of waves against their path. The coastline to the east shimmered, jagged rocks jutting like teeth from the sea. The men saw only peril there, but Odysseus saw a narrow chance. He steered the rudder, his voice firm, calling the men to follow his lead. Trust the path I choose, though it may seem more dangerous than the open sea. The men obeyed, pulling hard, though their arms trembled with doubt. The pursuing ships closed in, their shouts echoing across the widening gap. Odysseus guided his ship toward the rocks, threading through narrow passages. The sea roared louder, waves breaking hard against the sharp stone cliffs. His men gasped, fearing the ship would splinter, yet they trusted his command. Athena's voice rose within him, guiding his hand upon the rudder. "Hold steady, Odysseus. Fear clouds the path, but clarity keeps the course true." The ship slipped between towering rocks, the spray of sea drenching their faces. Behind them, the pursuing ships faltered, their captains unwilling to risk the cliffs. The narrow passage twisted, dangerous and dark. Yet Odysseus pressed onward. The men rowed with all their strength, driven by his steady commands. The roar of waves filled the air. Yet Athena's whisper calmed his racing heart. "You walk the line between risk and ruin, but wisdom turns danger into shield." At last, the ship broke free into open waters, safe beyond the deadly rocks. The men cried out in relief, their voices loud, their spirits lifted with triumph. The pursuing ships turned back, defeated by the perilous passage. Odysseus stood tall, his gaze firm, though his body sagged with exhaustion. He lifted his eyes to the heavens, whispering thanks to Athena's unseen hand. Her presence warmed him, a reminder that wisdom had carried them again. "Not all victories come from strength," she whispered, "but from knowing when to yield, when to turn." The men sang as they rowed, their fear fading into stories of escape. But Odysseus's mind remained quiet, holding fast to Athena's counsel. For he knew each danger left its mark, each trial carving lessons upon his soul. The sea spread wide once more, the horizon endless, the future uncertain. Yet within his heart, the flame of resolve burned steady, guided by wisdom. The ship pressed onward, toward distant shores and trials yet unseen. And though the sea tested him with cunning foes and narrow escapes, he endured. For Athena's guidance remained, a voice in shadow and light, shaping his journey home. The sea rolled gently beneath the ship, its waves bright beneath the noon sun. The men worked with steady rhythm, their voices lifted in song once more. But Odysseus stood apart, his thoughts weaving through memory and fear. He knew each calm day was a gift, but also a veil for the next trial. Athena's whisper came softly, like wind through olive leaves. "Beware, Odysseus, for not all dangers shout their names before they strike." His gaze swept the horizon, searching for shapes that did not belong. The air felt heavy, though the sky was clear and blue. Birds wheeled above, their cries sharp, circling in, restless flight. The men paid little mind, their hunger louder than their caution. One called out, pointing to the distant shore that gleamed faint on the edge of sight. The coast shimmered green and gold, promising rest and nourishment. The men cheered, their hearts eager, their hands quick upon the oars. But Odysseus felt unease coil deep in his chest, sharpened by Athena's warning. He studied the waves, noting their strange pull and shifting patterns. The sea seemed alive, its rhythm broken, its breath uneven. Athena's whisper rose again, clear and steady. "Trust not the calm that deceives, for beneath lies hunger older than men." His breath slowed, his eyes sharp, and he called out to his crew, "Hold steady, row with care. The sea hides teeth in places most fair." The men frowned, wearied by warnings, eager for land after endless waves. Yet they obeyed, their trust in Odysseus stronger than their impatience. The ship edged closer, the waters darkening, the waves circling strange. Odysseus felt the ship pull, as if drawn by a hidden hand below. The men gasped, their oars straining as the water grew heavy and thick. The sea swirled, a great whirl forming, its pull fierce and relentless. The men cried out, fear rising, their voices lost in the roar. Odysseus gripped the rudder, his arms firm, his eyes sharp with resolve. Athena's whisper steadied him, her wisdom flowing like fire through his veins. Balance, Odysseus. Steer not against the pull, but with it, finding the path between. He shouted to his men, his voice ringing clear. Pull steady, not against the tide, but across it. Let the sea carry, and we will live. The men obeyed, though their fear shook them, their strength tested by the whirl. The ship tilted, the waters spinning, the spray blinding their eyes. Yet Odysseus held firm, his grip strong, his mind guided by Athena's light. The whirl roared, but slowly the ship slid along its edge, finding escape. The men groaned with effort, their bodies aching, yet they rowed as one. At last, with a final surge, the ship broke free into calmer waters. The whirl faded behind, its rage swallowed by the endless sea. The men collapsed, panting, their hearts pounding with relief. Odysseus stood tall, though his body trembled, his spirit unbroken. He raised his gaze skyward, whispering thanks to Athena's unseen hand. Her voice answered, calm and proud. Wisdom is not in strength alone, but in learning to bend without breaking. The men lifted their eyes to him, their respect deepened by his courage. They spoke softly, calling him not just captain, but protector of their fate. Odysseus said little, for his heart knew the truth of their survival. It was Athena's guidance, her steady wisdom, that had led them clear. The sea calmed again, the sky wide and endless, the journey stretching on. The men sang once more, their fear turned to awe, their voices carrying hope. Odysseus listened, his mind quiet, his spirit warmed by the goddess's presence. Each trial, he knew, was both a danger and a gift, shaping his path to Ithaca. And though the sea's hunger had nearly claimed them, he endured with wisdom. Athena's voice lingered, steady and true, as the ship sailed into the horizon. The journey had stretched long, winding through storms, whispers, and endless sea. Odysseus carried in his heart not only the weight of distance, but the wisdom of each trial. Every shore, every choice, every moment of silence had shaped the man he became. And always, like a lantern in the dark, there was Athena's guidance by his side. Her voice had not shouted, but steadied, showing him where patience could win over pride. She had taught him that cleverness was not trickery, but vision sharpened by care. She had shown him that endurance was not just survival, but hope that refused to fade. Now, as Ithaca's shores rose before him, he felt time itself pause in quiet awe. The waves softened, the sky cleared, and the familiar hills gleamed like a long-lost dream. The men wept, their voices breaking, their eyes wide at the sight of their homeland. Odysseus stood at the prow, his hands firm, his breath steady, his heart aflame. Athena's whisper came gently, softer than ever before. You have journeyed far, son of Ithaca, and learned what strength truly means. Not in the sword, nor in the roar of battle, but in the mind that sees beyond fear. Odysseus bowed his head, his spirit humbled, his gratitude unspoken, but deep. The ship slid across the waters, every oar beat a drum of homecoming and peace. He thought of the whirlpools, the islands, the storms that nearly swallowed his fate. Each had been a teacher, each a step guided by wisdom greater than his own. His men gathered close, their laughter faint, their joy fragile but real. For they too had learned that survival was not only in muscle, but in unity. Athena's presence lingered like the scent of olive groves, eternal yet unseen, Her voice was no longer a constant whisper, but a memory etched in his soul. For guidance, once learned, becomes part of the traveler, never to be lost again. The prow touched Ithaca's sand, and silence fell, vast and full of meaning. The men disembarked slowly, kissing the earth, their tears falling without shame. Odysseus stepped last, his foot pressing into the soil of home. The air carried the scent of hearth smoke, of olive trees, of life waiting. He closed his eyes, and in that silence, Athena's final words came clear. Your journey was never only of seas and storms, but of heart and mind. You are home, Odysseus, not only in Ithaca, but in yourself. A stillness filled him, deep and unshakable, a peace no storm could break. The men laughed louder now, their voices carrying across the quiet hills. He smiled faintly, their joy becoming his, their survival his greatest triumph. Athena did not speak again, but he felt her blessing in the wind. It lifted the sails, it touched his brow, it lingered in every heartbeat. Odysseus knew he would face challenges still, for life itself was a voyage. But he would never again walk without wisdom, never again drift without clarity. For Athena's guidance was no longer beside him. It lived within him, steady, eternal, unbroken. And so ends the tale of a man who wandered far, yet never truly alone. The goddess of wisdom walked beside him, shaping each choice, each breath, each step. And in her light, he found not only the way home, but the way within. So, dear listener, remember this. Every sea we cross holds storms, but every storm holds a lesson if we listen for wisdom in the wind. Like Odysseus, we may falter, we may fear, yet we can endure with hope. And in the quiet, perhaps we too will hear Athena's voice, not as thunder, but as a gentle whisper, guiding us safely forward.